Item 2, notification of requests from public to address the meeting. We have 2, which is Olivia Anderton and Kev Standish Day. And I've seen, I think both of you are here, so we'll call you up at the appropriate point before item 7. So minutes of the meeting held in public on the 10th of September. Cabinet, we're happy to agree those? Agreed. Thank you. Declarations of interest by councillors. Are there any other declarations of interest over and above what's recorded? Okay. Chair's announcements. Okay. I'd like to welcome Barry Scarr, Mr. Barry Scarr, who's the new Section 151 officer. The chap sitting next to Malcolm for everybody's information, and we look forward to working with Barry and wish him well on what no doubt be a challenging number of months with us. But welcome, Barry. Thank you. There's a couple of other things. This is a new format, or a slightly adjusted format. We want to make the meeting to keep it as structured and as orderly as possible. And I've met with leader of the Labour group and the Lib Dem group, so hopefully we can all work together on how we make Cabinet work effectively. Of course, it is the meeting of Cabinet, but of course, as in what's in line with the Constitution, we want to give the right and relevant members the opportunity to address Cabinet. So hopefully we can do that today, and it is at the discretion of the Chair who speaks. And I'd just like to remind you and ask you to respect the Chair in that capacity. Also, I just want to mention that on the 5th of November, we have, I've requested an all-member briefing on the unitary programme, so that will be an opportunity for everybody to hear where the unitary programme is up to from the NCC point of view, and also ask questions of officers. And I've asked for particular focus on things like the Children's Trust, the adult social care integration, and basically the rest of the pertinent points of the programme. So I'll be sending an email out to everybody tomorrow, so if you could let us know if you could attend that, that would be good. But hopefully that can satisfy a lot of questions and queries that come up for all members. I just want to mention also about the IT issue that was raised at the Audit Committee, and just say how seriously we're taking that as Cabinet and through the officers as well. There is a report being written, and there'll be some recommendations and an action plan which I believe will come back through audit. But we have also asked the question, what happens in the short term in terms of disaster recovery? And we have been assured that our information currently is backed up through directly, quite regularly to Cambridgeshire. So there is some protection in place in the short term. Obviously, there are some issues that we do need to work on, but hopefully the report will identify those and bring it back through the appropriate channels, and everybody can get some satisfaction that things are being worked on and we've got the right level of protection. Okay, we'll move on to item 6, which is the progress within Northamptonshire County Council Transformation Programme. Councillor Scrimshaw, this is your report.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, Scrutiny looked at the current transformation programme, and we were generally impressed by the level of work being put in around that issue. We did recognise that whilst some of the savings from the work were on target, most of the savings from that work were on target, there was still some potential slippage, and this could add to extra pressure for the next financial year. And in particular, we recognise the situation regarding transformation in children's was likely to worsen without significant intervention. And that's the one point really that I specifically want to mention to Cabinet, because again, children's is the issue where we would hope that you will put your focus. We welcome the more robust approach to business planning that the transformation programme has brought, and hope that this model will be used to underpin next year's budget proposals, which we believe is the case. We look forward to seeing those. We will of course be returning to this subject again as part of our in-year budget monitoring, both indirectly and directly. And on a personal note, I'd just like to say that sometimes there seems to be confusion between the transformation projects which NCC need to undertake regardless of local government reform and the transformation needed for that reform, around both splitting up and bringing together services in the two proposed unitaries. So I personally think it would sometimes be worth an extra explanation when issues around transformation are being discussed in some of the public meetings around the county. But again, apart from that small personal point and any issues around any individual projects which are highlighted anyway in things like your monthly finance reports, Scrutiny is supportive of the procedures around the transformation programme. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Scrimshaw. I have to say, Cabinet only received the report very late, but reading through the recommendations, there's nothing here that we shouldn't be supporting, really. I welcome your comments, and of course, the point around children's, and believe you me, certainly it's the focus, the whole focus of us as Cabinet. We've had a meeting with the Chief Exec this morning to talk about the need and, you know, the want and will to move children's on. We are expecting an announcement this week, hopefully, from the Department for Education on the new Children's Commissioner. So we look forward to receiving that and looking forward to resetting that whole working alignment to move the whole service on. But as far as the report goes, we welcome the report and support the recommendation through scrutiny. Thank you. Cabinet, we're happy to agree with the report. Thank you.
In the limited time we have to read it.
Yeah. Okay, item 7, monthly revenue monitoring report for the financial year ending 31st of March. Before I bring in Councillor Long, we've got 2 speakers. So the first one is Olivia Anderton. If you'd like to come up to the front, Olivia. Thank you. So you have 3 minutes. If you could just basically introduce which cabinet item you're referring to and...
Transport. Is it transport?
Yeah, I've only just called transport.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. That one. Yeah. Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, at this meeting I would like a response as to whether you will put a halt to the current transport plans so that time can be taken to fully investigate the circumstances faced by many parents of children with special education needs or disabilities before this initiative is implemented and safety of children put at risk. There has been no change to the county's policy, so there has been no consultation. However, I wonder if you are aware that the policy is being implemented very differently to recent years, to which I have to wonder if you would consider this as a major change. Many recent cases across the country, children have had their transport seized based on mileage from home to school alone. This is in the policy, yet it is intended to be used for mainstream children. The government's guidance clearly uses the sanctuary walking distance as a criterion that should not be used when assessing children with special needs education. Instead, a needs assessment should be carried out with a child with SEND. Imagine a child with severe difficulties in walking being assessed on mileage alone. This is happening under the new implementation. Another example of this is that some secondary school aged children must be accompanied by an adult. Again, the government policy clearly questions equality. I too would question if a child without SEND would be accompanied to their A-level class in a mainstream setting. I am seriously concerned around many different decisions being made by the Transport Department at present and would welcome a full investigation as to whether they are abiding by all relevant laws in relation to both transport and disability and implementing the current local policy in a lawful manner. The policy covers home to school transport for all children, including those with and without send. When making decisions in this area, it's to understand how the eligibility and implementations needs to be different from mainstream versus send children to enable responsible adjustments to be made. There are specific areas within the government sanitary guidance 2014 that relate to children with send, and I would question whether the way the local policy is now being implemented is in line with this guidance. There is a serious lack of assessment, and quite frankly this is ridiculously short-sighted. No assessment of walking alongside a road, vulnerability in the community, walking in the dark, to name few of the different issues faced by the families. Parents are more than happy to help.
Finish off, please.
Is it? So in summary, I think that the Transport Department could have some very good schemes and initiatives to improve the lives of some of the children, but nevertheless I fear the lack of assessment of the children and young people's individual needs and family circumstances, and the way the policies are currently being implemented is unlawful, too unsustainable, and a serious risk to safeguarding some of the county's most vulnerable children and young adults.
Thank you.
Okay, shall I leave this here so you can read it?
You can do it. Thank you. We've got Ken Standish Day. Thank you.
It's Kevin Standish Day.
Thank you. If you could just try and stick to the time limit. Thank you.
Certainly. I'm here today to ask on behalf of staff why we've still got no pay rise and no incremental pay progression. Over the last couple of weeks, we've spent a few hours over lunch breaks petitioning staff, and we've gathered hundreds of signatures of support for a pay rise, including some from agency staff, many of whom have said they would come and work for us if we had proper terms and conditions. The sheer number of staff responding tells me the strength of feeling. Staff have also asked repeatedly how so many very high-cost senior-level staff can be appointed when NCC is too broke to pay staff properly. And I use the term pay because that's what we're talking about, not a reward. Staff are sick of opening an email welcoming another assistant director or describing how another agency is going to improve services while they're waiting for the one which says we're going to give you a pay rise or reintroduce incremental pay progression. They're also sick of hearing from yourselves about how much they're valued and how much you appreciate their commitment. But along with no pay rises, they're also been told that £2 million is going to be withheld from the budget deficit payment. How much do you expect staff to take before they completely withdraw their goodwill and commitment? And exactly how will services run when they do that? You can have as many highly paid senior managers as you like, but if you don't have committed staff to provide the services, it's going to fail. Each year, we continue to receive a salary cut, which is what this is. Our career average pensions also decrease. So not only are staff paying now by falling behind with the cost of living, when the extra council tax and the parking charges, etc., but when they retire, they're still paying for this by receiving a reduced pension. And this is appalling, and it has to stop. You have decided to put money into reserves, which could be used now to pay a 2% rise in the year, and you're budgeting for the same in April. Then the following April, the council won't exist. So any ongoing payroll costs will be borne by the new unitaries. So this is affordable now, and it's a choice not to do it. Increasing salaries in this way will also go some way to closing the gap between NJC agreed pay rises, which the borough staff receive, and the county staff. Ultimately, someone's got to be brave enough to return all staff to NJC terms and conditions. I know there's a cost, but it will save money over time in the future because you will stop hemorrhaging money to agencies and create a settled workforce. And I would argue a settled and properly resourced workforce will be more productive and suffer less stress as people will only be doing their job and not the job of two people. And finally, I'd ask you all to think seriously about this because very soon these very staff and their families and their friends will be voting for the new unitaries. And they'll remember how badly they've been treated by this administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. First off, I'll just ask Councillor Baker if you'd like to respond to the First Lady, Olivia Anderson.
Sorry. My responsibility is for the children and therefore the children with SEND in our district, our county. And I just want to tell you that this is not a rolled out performance throughout the whole of the county. This is a pilot that we're running at the moment, so that's why it hasn't gone to consultation. So we are running this pilot. We have had some difficulties with it, which we are fully aware, and they are being addressed. We're in consultation now with the head teacher of the 2 schools that we're using, and we will be contacting all the parents because we are aware from the children's Directorate that each child needs to be dealt with individually and looked at individually for their transport needs. There have been some successes, however, and a few of our young people have been pleased and with the independence that it's been giving them, and they have enjoyed the performance of going to school by themselves, but we're fully aware that this is not suitable for every single child on the SEND programme. And we will be liaising with the transport people to make sure that each child is looked at individually in discussion with the parents and the head teachers as we progress through this procedure.
Thank you, Councillor Baker.
Sorry, I was just want to say, if you if you're able to send your speech to me by email, then I will get a response from our Assistant Director sent to you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. I'll just make a point. Going back to Mr. Standish Day, we hear all the points you make, Kevin, and you know, I think we've tried to be really consistent all the way through with regard to staff pay rise. In that, yes, there is some contingency in the budget, but when we get to a point, if we get to a point where we're able to release that and we can show that we're going to be able to deliver the budget, we will award that pay rise. But I hear all the points you make, and I'm not going to come back to you with platitudes and say, you know, going back to some of the points you made, but of course the staff are incredibly important to us and we want to reward them, but we've got to keep that in the context of the financial challenge we're dealing with, and we'll stay consistent with that line. But I'd be happy to meet with you and chat with you outside of the meeting, and we can take those comments back through Cabinet, through the Chief Exec, and speak to the Commissioners and to see if we can move this on at some point before the end of the financial year. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Longley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Right, well, I'm not going to say too much here this afternoon because it's really a rerun of the last couple of months. If you turn to page 16, those of you that have the documentation, then this is the summary, and I think there are 2 points that come off this this chart, and the first one is that the forecast. Bear in mind, this is a forecast of a year end of 4.430 overspend. Now that is in fact about just over £500,000, £580,000 to be precise, better forecast than last month. And if you look at it from period 2, 3, 4 and now 5, each month we've been achieving an improved position. Now that's the upside. The downside, if you then look up to the Children's First Northampton, you'll see the forecast is a negative, an overspend of 7634. And if you look at the forecast of Children's, it's been getting progressively worse. Unfortunately, other areas have been able to make up that deficit. So the good news is the overall position is looking more favourable, but we still have to contain the children's spend. I'd be quite happy if we just stabilise that situation. That would be my watchword there. Other than that, there's not really very much to add because that's the story. If we stabilised Children's, and we bear in mind we have a winter on the way, so we never know what that's going to throw at us. So providing we get a reasonable winter, we stabilise Children, we're in good position. If we don't do either of those things, then we're not. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, well, as has been previously arranged, I've got a number of speakers, so I would exercise my discretion and allow those who have asked to speak. So we'll give it a whirl and see how we get on today. So the first is Councillor Scrimshaw.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking on behalf of Overview and Scrutiny, the Scrutiny Committee recognises that the annual projected overspend has decreased again, slightly, this month, but feel also that it's noteworthy that that is still only a small decrease, and that actually there are still increased pressures in children's services, which the portfolio holders referred to. Absolutely right that you try and stabilise the finances in children's, but a word of caution, of course, that needs to be done without affecting the service delivery. We've had reports from Ofsted, which I think make that clear. The proposed mitigating actions outlined on page 15 to try and deal with the year overspend give us some concern, as they're not robust enough to be relied on. And while we recognise the determination and the desire of the administration to address this problem, those proposals on their own can't be relied on, as they're very much based around ifs and maybes. And so we would strongly recommend to Cabinet that they begin work on a plan B in case it's needed. Earlier in the report, it's made clear that until actions are delivered in full, they won't be counted against the current forecast overspend. And on page 23, there appears to be an acknowledgement of savings due to negotiation with the Shaw PFI contract, despite those negotiations not having yet been finalised. And although Scrutiny welcomed the fact that constructive dialogue is now happening, we also note that it seems to have taken the intervention of the Department of Health and HM Treasury to push that forward. We're beginning to have more and more concerns about the cost of new senior positions, two examples of which, both for £77,000, are outlined on pages 17 and 30. We do, as a committee, understand the need for improved management at the top of the organisation, but given the pressure our staff are under elsewhere, we're concerned what may be seen by some as a trend of increasing costs at a senior level. And with regards to those examples, can I ask, please, whether they are simply for two new positions, as it sort of suggests, and if so, whether the 77,000 amounts of the total annual costs, or given that we're in October, whether these costs are just between now and the end of the financial year, which is what I'm assuming. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stamborough.
Thank you, Chair. So it's already been alluded to regarding children's services and the issues that that service area is having in delivering some of its budget savings commitments. There's a report, I understand, that's currently being prepared by SITFA and People Too, I think it is, into finances and budgeting and children's services. It would be really useful to have some comment here, if possible, as to when we expect that report to be delivered and the service area can start acting on its recommendations. So given the savings that children's aren't being able to deliver, clearly, and some of those plans may have been in place for some time, it would be interesting to know, and this is speaking to an email that has been shared with yourself and Councillor Baker and the head of service, written by Councillor Perry. What has prevented plans being expedited so far? We hear regularly about new ways and methods which are to be employed in order to transform services to extract money tied up in agency placements, for instance, but so far not a lot of change. New boards being set up for things like step down, but not necessarily seeing a lot of results. There is a concern as to whether these boards are the best way forward, and everyone's on board with that trajectory, so it'd be interesting to know something on that one. Another example would be, for instance, I believe there's an aspiration for 40 net new foster care placements internally in the year, but currently we're at a lot lower position than that. What's the logjam there? How can that be changed? How can that be moved forward? Agency conversion is another example. Some teams, for instance, in first response, are almost 100% agency staff. Clearly, it's something that we need to do a lot better than we're doing at the moment. But is that not dependent, for instance, on the development of the career pathway for staff in that area? And if so, when will that come to fruition? When will that be brought forward? Because it seems to be a fundamental consideration. Clearly, consensus at the highest level about the way forward in our children's service and a full understanding of the things we need to do is important. Has that in any way, or maybe a lack of that consensus, prevented some progress so far? Would be useful to have confirmation that's not the case, of course. And finally, there's still a huge concern around the context around the high number of unallocated cases, which appears to be back to where it was some time ago. Can we hear some reassurance that action is being taken to bring those figures down again, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stanborough. Councillor Hakewell.
Thank you, Leader. I like the new system. I got 3 questions which I'd already alerted you to, which I thought was a procedure, so I hope I'm doing right. Question number 1. What additional cost directly to NCC and indirectly to contractors and partners used by NCC will the government's announcement of an increased living wage be in financial year 2019-20 and 2021? Question 2. What circumstances have changed since the Pensions Committee unanimously rejected earlier this year the rescheduling of NCC's contribution to the Northamptonshire Local Government Pensions Scheme outside the formal triennial valuation process contribution setting cycle? And question 3, the payment of staff pay increases was not implemented earlier this financial year. The reason given was the need to create headroom, and I quote, before its implementation. What is the definition of headroom such that it would at some point trigger payment of salary increases to staff? Thank you.
Thank you. Then I've got Councillor Roy. No, I haven't had an email from you, Julie.
Where? To Suresh?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. After Councillor Roy, then.
Just to state that I welcome your offer today to meet with Kev Standish Day about the particular issues about pay and pensions, but these aren't issues that go away. And I do think, from my perspective, part of the reasons that we are where we are with children's and the overspend is because of pay. And had we got to a situation where there was a faster implementation of the scrutiny proposals around agency conversion, had we got to a stage where we were putting people on national terms and conditions, I don't think we would be in the overspend that we are at the moment. And actually, we're not getting any better. It seems very much from the outside that the modus operandi to deal with deficit is to cane the staff again, whether it be in pay or even in terms of taking things out of the LGPS pension.
Can I just clarify something? You say that to cane the staff, that's the last thing we're trying to do here. We're trying to work with the staff. We've tried to articulate, as we've gone through this year, what the issues are, and when we get to a point, we will do our utmost to make that payable. I think it's inappropriate to put to us that we're caning the staff. Thank you.
I would put to you that that is a perception. It may not be your perception, but had you had not a pay rise in the last few years, had you had to pay the increased council tax, that essentially is something that we have to find out of existing salaries. That is essentially pay cut. Just also like to spend a little bit of time on the SE&D transport issue, and I want to thank Councillor Baker for chasing the senior officer, but I still haven't had any response to my questions, and this is part of the theme around this implementation, with most parents I speak to saying they have not had any contact, and this does not build confidence in a process of transformation. I was speaking to one parent last night, and her Year 7 pupil has been selected. She went to one of the information evenings. She was told she would be given information about this. None has come out, and no responses to any of her emails, as none to mine either. I think if we are doing this with individual needs assessment, it could work, but it needs to have the confidence of parents. And when there isn't any communication, that is a considerable risk. If you do the individual needs assessment, you might be in a more positive position. Otherwise, it could be expensive.
Thank you. Councillor Davenport.
Thank you, Chair. I also wanted to speak on the home to school transport budget cuts, and I appreciate what Councillor Baker has said. However, the reality to me, I've been engaged in this from the very beginning, that parents were just sent letters and told that your children will have to, in future, on the 4th of November, instead of being picked up from home, they will have to go to a pickup point, and we still don't know where these are. Bearing in mind, it starts on the 4th of November. And I cannot reiterate enough the stress that these poor parents have been through. We've got a closed group together now, and everyone is supporting everyone else. But it's the not knowing and the fact that nobody even told them that this was going to happen. The first thing they knew was a letter that was sent to them saying this will happen, and everybody, you see, because this council's finance scrutiny committee were assured that each child would be individually assessed, and that hasn't happened at all, and they haven't even consulted with parents or met with the children. And we all realise that there are children with who will be good candidates for this, but they should do the individual assessments they said they would do to determine suitable candidates. And why is this being rolled out in the winter? You know, when there's dark mornings and evenings, rain, snow, ice, vulnerable children could easily slip or get lost, or much worse. And in Delapre, on the Toaster Road, there's a really steep hill that I struggle with. So if children had to walk up that with disabilities, that would be a big issue. And if parents had to take the children to the pickup points due to vulnerability, because would anyone want them to walk on their own, the independence argument used by this council doesn't stand. And also, due to parents working and other commitments, etc., they'll need to drive the children to pickup points, so the emissions argument doesn't stand either, because emissions will be worse with all the individual cars. Now, we were told at a meeting recently that this council says it's not about money. But as of today, the Cabinet papers state that they expect to save £454,000 from home to school transport this year, when only £300,000 was budgeted for. So are SEND children being added to this, and that's where you've got a lot higher, yeah, it's about 50% more savings. And vulnerable children, they need routine. So,
if you could finish off then, thank you.
You know, if you're going to change their schedules, you know, it's going to scare and upset them. So really, we need to delay it, get proper assessments for each individual child, ensure that the selected children are properly prepared for the change. That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Cabinet, there's quite a bit of detail there, a number of issues covered. I want to invite Cabinet members to make comment relative to their department and cover off any of the points, if you're able to, raised by any of the speakers. If I could ask Councillor Morris if you'd like to start.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm just going to talk about adult social services, and this is a thank you to the team that runs such a tight ship in adult services, that we are forecasting an underspend of 479,000 for this period 5, which is a favourable movement of 155,000 from the position reported in period 4. And I think, despite all the pressures that are brought to bear on the adult social services, it's really good to see that we are controlling our budgets in such a way. And I have to recommend Anna for all her hard work that she does as a director of that service. Councillor Scrimshaw did mention the Shaw PFI. This is a constructive dialogue that has been going on for a number of months, and was at our instigation that we in fact got involved with the Department of Health and the Treasury in order to see how we might use the contracts that have been in place and which we're finding very difficult to work with in order for us to use them better. So. And we're quite happy with the progress, and I think they are also very happy with the progress at the Department of Health and the Treasury. And if you look at 6.27 on page 23, it shows an improved saving of 303,000 from our work to use the care centres in a better way. So that work is ongoing, and it will carry on being ongoing, and hopefully will gain more savings in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Naden-Hawley.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that it was instigated by here, nowhere else. It started off when I was Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, and I'm pleased to say that it is changing, and I just want that to be reiterated. Also, I'd like to draw your attention to page 16 and the less funding part of that forecast. We've got an underspend of 1.1 million, which will be finalised in the last quarter. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smithers, did you want to add anything from Place?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm clearly flying the flag for Place, and thank them truly for leaning into the global picture of the savings. So the movement at the end of P5 in the Place forecast is a further net saving of £755,000. It's made up of a number of items, but the 5 largest movements are in the home to school transport, where a further 340k has been saved as a result of rationalisation of routes, retendering of contracts over the summer holiday, and continuing concessionary bus fares, and the adherence to the home school policy as well. So concessionary bus fares are where, as a result of the reduced patronage, that has forecast a reduction in expenditure of 212,000 this year. Related to the economic development activity, a reduction in expenditure on professional fees and hired services, an £85,000 sort of saving that's come in there. And there's an underspend on the asset utilisation budget due to agreed dilapidation costs of being less than originally forecast of 95,000. And finally, within the school PFI budget, there is a reduction of forecast expenditure in the revenue budget as a result of capitalising the cost of the blind replacement, creating a saving of another 158,000. So well done to the guys in Place, and we're doing our best to sort of lean into the global picture.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. Councillor Baker, any comments?
Councillor Stamborough, who put forward quite a lengthy lot of questions on behalf of Councillor Perry, and if you're happy, I will email you the replies to all of those when I have collated most of them, but there's a couple missing still, but I will get them to you by tomorrow. The SEND situation that many of you have spoken about is a pilot, so it is only affecting 1 or 2 schools in the county at the moment. It is a situation that I agree, from the children's perspective, did not set off well, in that the transport officers had a good plan, but unfortunately the consultation between us was not great. So we are now addressing that. we are going to be looking at each child individually and speaking to parents and head teachers to make sure that we do not have any difficulties, and those that are able to take advantage of the service can, and those that would like to take part in being more independent and walking, whatever, they can do that too. And those of you who know me will know that I will be very concerned about this issue. So we are working very hard on that, and we are setting up meetings as we speak. Councillor Royce, as she mentioned, I did contact her this morning, and I did contact the officer twice now, so I will be speaking to him because we need to get answers from him as to what's happening, and I will get it to you as soon as I know. We're doing a round of events on agency conversions this week, and next week new permanent recruitment campaign will be launched. So we are working on things which may not be in front of you all the time, but there are improvements happening, and we are all working exceedingly hard in the Children's Department to make sure that we not only look after our children, but we try to stay within our budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Longley, do you want to respond?
Yeah, that's fine. Well, most of the points I think have been covered by other councillors. I'm very glad that Fiona's been taking notes. So, right, let's deal with next issue is Plan B. Yes, there are Plan Bs. Of course, there are quite a few plans, in fact, and there's a lot of productivity programmes, not all of which will gain total fruition, of course, but others we've hopefully got enough to cover, and that's an ongoing thing, and always will be from here to the year end. You asked about expensive staff. Was it 2 positions or 1? I don't know. I'd have to take advice on that. Moving on to Chris, the CIPFRA report. Yeah, we're all looking forward to that. And it's been a bit long time in the coming, but really interested to see what it says. We were talking about it this morning, the very thing, in fact, asking where it was. After that, there were a lot of children's questions, and which I hopefully Fiona's answered for me. Moving on to Jim, living wage impact, don't know, but it's bound to be negative as far as the budget's concerned. However, a calculation is easily done on that and will be done for the next budget. And what it'll mean, of course, is inevitably is productivity always comes to the fore then, and things like that have to mitigate that. Pension scheme, what's different? Well, quite a lot actually. Back in 2016, the pension fund was underfunded. It was less than 80% funded. As of the latest, it's over 90% funded. So, but in any event, that's down to the pension committee to make that decision. We'll see where that goes. Staff pay implementation, I think that's been covered already. So we looked to Councillor Roy and Julie. There were children's issues, of which I hopefully have been answered in full. I just finish off by saying that the issue is it has got better month by month. These are only forecasts, they're not actuals. And so the containment or the stabilisation of the children's spend and hopefully a reasonable winter is what we're looking for. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. I just want to reiterate those points. If you look at the table on page 16, you can recognise the effort the whole authority across the board is putting in to dealing with the budget this year. And of course we recognise the challenge in children's services and the immense effort being put in to that as well by that directorate. But what we'd like to see is that's being controlled a little bit more as we move forward, so we can deliver a net position of balance at the end of this year. But I just want to make the point that we recognise the effort across the board that is going in to deliver this, and we look forward to moving things on. So, Cabinet, are we happy to agree the report? Thank you. So, item 8, the monthly capital report, forecast outturn, period 5. Councillor Longley.
Yeah, fine. Well, I think the again, it's a bit similar story to last month. What you'll observe, those that have been following this, will observe that the forecast capital expenditure is 85 million. That's slightly lower than we were forecasting last month, which was slightly lower than the month before, and so on. And that is the trend. It'll be there or thereabouts at the year end. So that's really the important number on there. We still stick to the criteria that we put forward at the budget for capital, and we'll continue to do so for the rest of the year, and that will keep that in a well-controlled and contained position. With regard to item 2 and 3, I think one or two others want to make a comment on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. I've got Councillor Stanborough.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to attempt to continue and perhaps nail down a dialogue that I've been attempting to have regarding the governance of the capital programme, and specifically what's described at the second bullet point in paragraph 4.1 as the Placeshaping Board and the Transformation Board, which is chaired by the Chief Executive, which, from what's written here, meets to review and consider business cases for new capital investment and funding prioritisation, and then make recommendations to Cabinet for approval. My concern around that, and also around the other things that the Placeshaping Board does, is that the things that that board does not choose to recommend to Cabinet for approval, according to what's written here, will never see the light of day as far as any councillors' eyes are concerned. And so there could be things that councillors, possibly even the Cabinet, might consider to be good ideas and things that ought to be taken forward, which aren't being taken forward because it appears there is no councillor or Cabinet representation on this board. I don't think that's right. I think there should be an eye being cast over proposals by members of Cabinet or the appropriate councillor, and I wonder if anybody on Cabinet might agree with that. Thank you.
Okay, I've got no other speakers on this. Councillor Morris? Oh, sorry. Councillor Davenport, you asked to speak on this. Okay, well, I never did see that email. I'm happy for you to come and speak, given that this is the first try of this.
Thank you. So I've, and like other county councillors I'm sure, have asked me many questions about the North West Relief Road, and it's mentioned on page 50. I know it's an MBC contribution, but they're saying, considering the finances of this councils and other councils, mentioning no names, why are we trying to tie in future capital up for the new unitary with this so-called relief road that will not alleviate the dreadful congestion on our roads? And the reason I ask is that the council's justification of this road is based on a theoretical traffic flow, whereas realistic and operational traffic flows indicate that this road will be heavily congested, and I'm told reports show that this relief road will be so congested that drivers will resort back to the very routes that this council suggests would get relief. Now, I'm always being told by residents, and I'm inclined to agree at times, that there is no joined-up thinking with the planning of this town, and we tend to be reactive and try to solve things in a piecemeal way, creating bigger problems for ourselves later. And surely a much better plan for the future is the orbital road from the A45 near junction 16 of the M1 to the A43 near Sywell. Now, that would be a dual carriageway, no traffic lights or roundabout to add to congestion, with slip roads for access and egress. This solution is way overdue and will solve many problems and make Northampton much more attractive to both potential residents and businesses. And, let's wait for the funding for that solution. The traffic assessment addendum, early indications show that many roads and junctions in the north of Northampton will be, on average, 40% more congested with the North West Relief Road. Now, this is based on this council and WSP's published traffic flow statistics in the September addendum. So my question would be, will we be binding the new unitary council with this huge capital expenditure? And is this road the right road for the vision we have for the future of this town? Or is it just an expensive quick fix for now? And, you know, let's be more proactive and look at the whole town instead of just chunks of road in isolation when planning for the future. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Morris. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. It was more of an observation, really. I mean, if you look at this report and you see the capital expenditure of 85 million and look where we were at with capital expenditure not that long ago, I think this demonstrates the grip that we have as an administration and as an executive on the capital expenditure of this council. And I think, despite what Councillor Stanborough says, there is oversight and there is control on the capital expenditure. And I will just throw something in on the roads, if I may, since I used to handle that a little bit. And this, well, I'm sure Jason's got something to say, but we get funding from government for our infrastructure. Obviously, there is some design elements that we have to find when we build roads, but these roads are of vital importance to the infrastructure of the county, and they are largely funded from government funding pots. We don't fund these directly ourselves. Some of it obviously comes from 106 money or SIL money, and some comes directly from government, and they are assessed against the criteria for which government assess these things. But to reiterate, the money, we are very good at raising infrastructure funding in this county, and these two roads that I know you're referring to, although they are disjointed, will eventually form a whole road, and it is important to note that, and it will have a big impact on the traffic surrounding the town. That was an observation from me. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. I just want to reiterate that point as well. As far as I'm concerned, the Northampton North West Relief Road is a strategic priority for the county and as well as for Northampton. If you look back at the plans that it's contained in, it's captured in the West Northampton Joint Course Strategy and all the big strategic planning documents to allow growth and vehicle movement around Northampton. So I think it is the right thing to have in for future schemes and way beyond the life of this county council. Thank you. Councillor Smithers, do you want to add anything?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I basically echo everything you two guys have said, and what my predecessor has. Isn't he very good? What I will say is to Councillor Davenport, if you have any questions about particular road schemes and so on like that, please do email me, and I'm more than happy to give you a full briefed up sort of description of where we are with things, and we'll definitely get the answers for you. Yeah, but if you could just contact me and I can get you those answers.
Through the chair, Jace. Sorry. I'll just ask the Chief Exec to comment on the infrastructure plan.
Just to make everybody aware, we are currently working on a strategic infrastructure plan for the whole of the county, which should address some of the concerns that you've raised around how do things join up and why are we doing bits here and there. And that infrastructure plan is funded by ourselves, by England Economic Heartland, and also by some of the business rates pilot funding money that we received as well. So there was a commitment from all 8 councils to put a portion of that into developing a strategic infrastructure plan that then all the other plans could hang off of in the future, because we don't have one single plan that joins everything up in a sensible way.
Thank you. Councillor Longley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chris, Placeshaping Board, where is he? He's gone to hiding. Is he still here? Yes. Oh, right. What we have here is that every month, very much like the meeting that we have on the P&L, as I call it, or the we have a monthly meeting on the capital, and there's a very, very capable lady that comes along, and we go through this report in a great deal of detail. Now, if you would like to come along to one of those one time and see what you make of it, then you're very welcome to. So the Placeshaping Board is a good operation, and it tends to be a cabinet member on it would get in the way, I think. All the arguments and all the discussions are had there, and then they're boiled down and they come forward in a report which I see on a monthly basis. and I'm very, very satisfied the way it's handled. As I say, I suggest, Chris, you come and sit in on that meeting with myself. It's usually done a day or two before the Cabinet meeting, and I think you'll find it very interesting. I can't comment on the new relief road. People are far more qualified than I, so Chair, please paying attention. There you have it.
Okay, Cabinet, are we happy to agree with the report? Agreed. Thank you. So move on to item 9, the Northamptonshire Youth Justice Plan. Councillor Bacon. Councillor Bacon.
Thank you. This is a report, the annual report from the Youth Justice Service. We're very happy to say that this is a solid service with very good working partnerships with courts, magistracy, I knew I'd have difficulty with that word, and police and the council, that has a very positive impact on our young offenders. This is a partnership working to the Northamptonshire courts model, reviewing sentences and encouraging young people to get a positive outcome. Magistrates will visit young people in other venues to assess the performance of their sentence and assist with problem solving of any issues they may have. This is a partnership board, and the head of this service reports directly to the board members. The date of the report, in case some of you may have been concerned about this, because I looked and thought, well, that's a bit strange, is to fall in with the Youth Justice Plan cycle, not the County Council cycle. So if you're confused about the date, as I would. But this is one of our good news stories. As you can see on the money's put in by all the organisations in the county that have interest in helping these young people, have all put money into this service. They all work exceedingly well together, and it's one of our big successes, and I'm very happy to be a member of that board. It works exceedingly well in my view. So I just put this report to Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Got Councillor Bob Scott.
Thank you, Chairman. Generally, I found it a very informative report, and I congratulate the team on their work on especially on the starter pack, known as the Northamptonshire model. However, the report I found also was difficult to understand because of the use of abbreviations. I was disappointed to learn that an integrated adolescent service has still not been developed. It's an area that has been highlighted since Joan Kirkbride's time as deputy leader, and it's an area that we really need to concentrate on, that particular area. And whilst it's pleasing to see that our performance in most areas is better than the national or regional figures, I am concerned that we have a consistent figure over a number of years in relation to reoffenders, 6% being responsible for 45% of reoffences, 44% in previous years. It's a figure that seems to be fairly static. And one would have thought that we would have had some influence on that over the length of time that that's been there. Other areas of concern is in relation to the unregulated placements. And I don't know how many have been looking at news reports on that recently and the Panorama report on that recently. And I think in answer to one question that Councillor Stone put some time ago, it was said that we had 40% of our placements in unregulated accommodation. And that's a figure that cannot be sustained.
I think that's quite incorrect. I think we need to get some clarification on that. But
yeah, it was a figure that was quoted. Now, I don't think you said anything in relation to that when it was first mentioned. Perhaps you should have, but you quoted it. There are a number of areas, as I said, in this report, and it's good to see that there's quite an emphasis on knife crime, on reducing the criminalisation of children and the young people in care, which was about the Northamptonshire model. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Councillor Golby, and I'd just like to say how refreshing it is for me to be able to come up and speak, and that you've changed your minds on letting the backbenchers have their say. Very, very welcome. With regard to the report, I've read the report and I find the report very interesting, but I want to speak on behalf of children in care and looked after and children leaving care. I think the report actually doesn't go far enough, because what I want to see from the youth justice system is that this organisation will get more hands-on and more approachable and be more talking to children in care and care leavers, and to find out what their needs are. What's the reason I'm saying that for is because most of you may have heard in the news just recently there was a shooting in Falklands, in the area that I represent. A young 16-year-old was shot very seriously. Now the gangs which are based on the eastern side of the town are homing in on care leavers, and that's a very important issue, I think, for the youth justice system. And what we need to do is to get more hands-on and talk to these youngsters before they actually leave care. So that's what I want to see. And the other thing you may be interested to hear, you know that I'm a director of this charity, and my aim is to set up a youth centre, and I can see that becoming a reality, providing we can raise £2 or £3 million, which I'm pretty hopeful. I heard it laugh, but I'm pretty hopeful that this would be a goal for the future. That's what one of the things I'm going to do, and I would like to see somebody from this board liaising with the charity that I represent. I just think this report should go a bit more and represent the young people leaving care, to stop them being criminised before they actually become criminised, because that's what I see in this report. The justice system will not get involved with these children until they obviously come before the courts, or they get in touch with the police, and the police refer them to this organisation. So please go and talk to these children, set up a liaison with, there is young people there of care leavers who can give you information. I have had information from them. I've been liaising with them. And the reality is that this children's centre will actually be come about by this new charity standout. And thank you very much for all the councillors who have contributed to this charity. It's really been wonderful and heartfelt.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Roy.
Thanking officers for the report. I think it's salient to think about this report alongside other reports that are equally relevant, particularly the recent NCC Ofsted report, but also the HMRC report in July that criticised Northamptonshire Police for delays and backlogs in recording information about missing children, particularly because within the report it states that, as Councillor Meredith has highlighted, looked after children are a big cohort, 40% of the youth offending population. It is more salient that we address this. Also to highlight the issues raised by Councillor Scott, and this was raised within the Ofsted report, of our use of unregulated placements. And it's interesting that you question some of the figures, because I've also been seeking answers about some of the figures. I sought information on the trends of this over the last 5 years on the 29th of July, and on the 20th of August, I was advised that this was being taken through a Freedom of Information Act route. And at the last full council on the 19th of September, I asked specifically how many councillors' inquiries were actually taken through a Freedom of Information Act route, only to be told by Councillor Naden-Hawley that actually no councillor inquiries were taken down a Freedom of Information Act route. So after the meeting, kindly Councillor Naden-Hawley offered to take this up. I've been in communication with her, and I still can't get this information around...
So youth justice plan we're talking about?
Unregulated placements.
Well, we'll get some clarification on this.
And unregulated placement is really salient to the youth justice plan, because part of our geography means that we're exceptionally vulnerable to children being involved in county lines, and that's more of an issue when they go missing from care, and that's more of an issue in terms of unregulated placement. So this is entirely relevant, and these are children that we are corporate parents for. So it really is important that we actually do take this seriously. And if councillors cannot get even fundamentals of information without getting through freedom of information quagmire, then what is the route? This is exactly the kind of issue that Max Caller drew attention to, and I would question whether we have actually improved. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baker, did you want to comment on any of these?
Yes, just a couple of points, really. Just to point out again, because there are always various questions at these meetings that are open to the public and being filmed, that I am happy to answer and help you with every day of the week that I'm in the building. If any of you want to make an appointment to come and talk to me, I have seen a few of you, I'm always happy to find a space to do that. And if you send me an email, I always respond and try and get you the information that's needed. I will check out the 40% figure, because that is obviously a concern for all of us. And acronyms are something that I have an absolute abhorrent of, and I have mentioned that already, and for the next one they won't be there. And obviously we are all exceedingly concerned about care leavers. I take on Councillor Roy's point. I am aware more than most that I'm a corporate parent. I have these things, figures and papers with me every day of the week. And I agree that we need to work on this. It is an area we are working very hard on. But as far as our Youth Justice Board is, we are recognised as being a very high-performing service in the country. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to add to that. We're well aware of the challenges in children's services, but I think the Youth Justice Plan and the work they do as a partnership is a very good service, and we should be proud and congratulate them on the work they do in a very challenging area. Cabinet, are we happy to agree with the report? Thank you. So item 10, Councillor Smithers, England's Economic Heartland, shaping the future, framework and engagement, and shaping the future together. Thank you.
Absolutely, Chair. Thank you very much. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the broad content of Northamptonshire County Council's response to the outline transport strategy published by England's Economic Heartlands, the EEH, Transport Forum, and the West Northamptonshire Strategic Plan Issues Consultation. If anyone wants a copy of it, there is some over there with our friends from the local newspaper, and it's all sitting there so people can pick up a copy. These are both key policy documents which will help to shape the way that Northamptonshire grows and functions over the next 30 years. The EEH is an alliance of local authorities, including the County Council. It covers a wide area stretching from Cambridgeshire in the east to Swindon in the west, and from Hertfordshire in the south and Northamptonshire in the north. The intention is that the EEH will become a statutory sub-national transport body. A key function of each body is to prepare a transport strategy for its area. Government and local transport authorities such as NCC and its successors must take this strategy into account when preparing their own transport-related strategies, proposals and decisions. This means that the EEH transport strategy will have real weight. Indeed, other transport bodies such as Transport for the North and the Midlands Connect have already benefited from significant investment from government and better services. The West Northamptonshire Strategic Plan issues consultation documents, has been prepared by the 3 local planning authorities in West Northamptonshire, with support from the County Council. The purpose of the document is to inform the preparation of the West Northamptonshire Strategic Plan extending up to 2050. One of the key drivers for a review of this existing plan for the West is the government's designation of the Oxford-Cambridge Arc as a key economic priority, affirmed by its ambition for up to 1 million high-quality new homes across the Arc by 2050. This area includes the whole of Northamptonshire. If this is to be achieved, it will be necessary to accommodate the substantial increase in the planning and delivery of new homes and ramp up investment in the new infrastructure. The documents which have recently been published for consultation mark the start of the plan-making process, which means that they do not contain specific proposals. However, it is important that the County Council takes the opportunity to comment on these documents. This is so it can influence the formal draft plans which will be drawn up and published before the consultation in 2020. The intention of this report is to agree the broad thrust of the County Council's response to both documents within the Executive Director of Commercial and Place, delegated authority to submit responses in liaison with myself as the Cabinet Member. Section 5 of the report outlines a series of key themes which is proposed should form part of the County Council's response. I do not intend to go through all of these now. Instead, I've picked out 5. Improved rail connectivity for Northamptonshire, taking advantage of the opening of the East-West Rail, next phase due to open in 2023, and release capacity from the construction of HS2. Induction of smart motorway type technology on the A14 and the A34, the A43 and the A45 corridor. Widespread deployment of charging points for ultra-low emission vehicles, ULEV, both on street and in public car parks, including a mandatory requirement in all new developments to include charging points. Infrastructure to benefit active travel, walking and cycling, including a core segregated cycle network spanning the area and connecting local networks such as the Norbital across Northampton and the Greenway in the East Northamptonshire networks. Continued commitment to greater full fibre coverage through the successful Superfast Northamptonshire initiative and 5G connectivity. This is essential to help drive economic growth, enrich lives and support the deployment of technology upon the transport network. A key thread of the County Council's response to both documents is recognition that Northamptonshire suffers from an infrastructure deficit. This deficit must be reflected and addressed through the EEH transport strategy and the new North West strategic plan. If this is done, including the implementation of the measures set out in this report, then the County Council believes that Northamptonshire can play a leading role in meeting the government's aspirations for economic growth, innovation and new jobs in the corridor area. I look forward to your support on this report and its recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Stanborough.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking specifically about the England's Economic Heartlands document, and you have to welcome some of the emphasis in it around doing things that result in net gain for the environment. That's to be welcomed, but I think we need to go further. You only have to have a look at the questions that the consultation is going to be asking and just cover the first 2. Does the draft vision, connecting people and places with opportunities and services, provide sufficient focus for the transport strategy? I'd argue no, it doesn't. If the aim is going to be about net gain for the environment and something that's outlined in the second question regarding a zero carbon transport system, then the emphasis needs to be much more on moving traffic off roads. So it's about rail, it's about freely admit public transport runs on the roads, but it's much better to have 20 or 30 people in one vehicle than one person in a vehicle, and also about vehicles that don't use the internal combustion engine, whether they are on the road or on the rail or diesel fuel and so on. So there needs to be a lot more emphasis there. So that sort of draft vision needs some work, I think. And the ambition to have a zero carbon transport system by 2050 sufficiently challenging? No, it's not. I think it's quite well acknowledged that if we get to zero carbon by 2050, we're getting there too late. And I think that perhaps the aim in the document should be something for a bit more ambitious, which is almost unchallenging, which is almost acknowledged in the question. So plenty of, I think, movement in the right direction, but there's a lot more that the transport strategy could do, and I'll do my best to contribute to the consultation on that basis and hope that this authority might do so too. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, we welcome this paper, which I believe is long overdue. The content tend to concentrate on West Northampton. I take it there will be a similar paper for the North. Chairman, I have to say I am a bit skeptical for the simple reason, over the years, this administration's interest in terms of transportation policy related to roads, with very little emphasis, if any, on rail transportation and its infrastructure. This council is guilty of ignorance when it comes to the significant contribution a good quality rail network system could make in keeping vehicles off the roads, reducing the carbon footprint and improving air quality. This council should take the lead in getting phase 2 and 3 development done at Northampton Railway Station, but it is not. We should be at the forefront of getting the platforms at Long Bugby extended and having the station upgraded to accept longer passenger trains, which are needed to deal with the current capacity gap and expected demand based on the council, this own council's housing needs projection. But we are not. Bullet point 7 on page 45 goes on to say integrated high-quality public transport network, improving journey times and widening the scope of existing bus services with a particular emphasis on investment to better connect larger urban areas and other significant trip generators. Chairman, nobody believes this, and I'll tell you why. No sooner after the scrutiny carried out its bus service review that was published in July 2014, this council started the system of making drastic cuts to bus services subsidy in the county. The last straw came in October 2017 when the decision was made to withdraw all bus subsidies.
Is this actually relevant to the economic
I think it is.
document?
I think it is. I'm afraid it is. Because if we can't help people in rural areas, how are we going to reduce the carbon footprint? Anyhow, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I want to talk about something that is relevant to the paper, and that's just to emphasise again the infrastructure that the economic heartland is going to help us deliver in the county. I mean, the list is quite long, but I will read it out because I think it deserves to be read out. So there's the Isham Bypass, the Toaster Relief Road, the A43 Northampton Kettering improvements, the Northampton Northern Orbital, and last but by no means least, the A422 Farthing-Hoe Bypass. This shows not only our commitment to infrastructure, but their commitment to infrastructure as well, and to help us to deliver those projects across the county. And I think this is a really exciting piece of work, and it's for something for the unitaries to build on as well. So I think very important to note how much influence, if you like, we have had over the process in getting our priorities into this paper. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to echo some of that. I was at the Economic Heartland meeting on Friday, and it's important to remember that this was a body that was set up by Northamptonshire, Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire, and is now looking to turn into a sub-regional national transport body, if I got that the right way around, and support the notion that we're putting across about the infrastructure deficit in the county. That's something we've got to keep banging the drum about. And just on Councillor Stanborough's point, if you actually pick up one of the copies, the chair of the Strategic Transport Forum is Mayor Dave Hodgson, who's one of your Liberal Democrat colleagues, so you might want to pick up some of those issues with him. Councillor Smithers, did you want to add anything?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Strachan, where's he gone? No, he's over there. Again, some of your points I didn't think were particularly relevant to the document here, but please feel free to ask those questions of us and we can get you an answer. I think it's fair to say that as a whole cabinet and a council, we are fully committed to the infrastructure of these road networks that are being built. The Chief Executive is having a very hands-on role in this. You know, we are not going to allow anything like this to slip. We will deliver. So, you know, there's the commitment from us. But I hope Cabinet recommend and support this report.
Cabinet, happy to agree the report? Agreed. Okay, item 11, the target operating model with NAS. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chair. This paper is about a new target operating model for NAS. The paper is asking us to support adult services in the design and implementation of a new model, pathways and process based on the analysis and diagnostic recently undertaken. The second thing we're being asked to do is to negotiate the contract for this new operating model, subject to any fixed terms and conditions that may apply to any chosen framework selected. And the third thing we're being asked to do is to award a contract following the procurement process, which is intended to commence, the new contract will commence around or about December 2019. The objectives of the programme are fairly broad, but there's a couple that I wanted to highlight. Customers we want to support customers to achieve their outcomes more effectively, and where possible, help them to maintain their independence. Staff are supported to make consistent decisions and spend more time with customers and less time on back office tasks, and that they are helped to offer the optimum solutions to meet customer needs, primarily focusing on independence, which is we're trying to keep people away from hospitals and away from being ill, essentially. The care and support offered provides the best outcomes for the client while delivering value for money, which is obviously something that we always strive to do, and supporting long-term financial sustainability that allows the service to support more customers in the face of what is a rising and never-ending demand, as it would appear to be. We have a growing population, we have massive demand on adult social care in Northamptonshire, and we need to look differently at how we deliver this model in order to, as I say, help the outcomes. We have commissioned some independent specialist work to look at how this might go forward, and this was funded through the Business Rates Pilot Programme with the agreement, which I think is very important, of the Pilot Programme Board, who see the importance of the work that we're trying to achieve here. It should be noted that the diagnostics analysis was undertaken in the context that the County Council has an unprecedented financial challenge, and we face over the last 3 years, and we have achieved a balanced budget at the end of the 18-19 financial year. However, there are still significant financial challenges for adults and children within the council, and we have to deal with those, and one of the ways we're trying to deal with that in the adult social care is to come up with this new operating model. The programme of change will be based on a fixed fee. Fees are expected to be between a certain figure of 4 to 7 million with a 1 to 4 to 1 to 5 return on investment. It's important to note that without the return on investment, there will be no fees paid. So they work at their own risk. Whoever gets this role will be working at their own risk and may not get paid if they do not deliver the savings identified. We could be looking at between 15 and 25 million effectively from this model, so I think it is something that we need to look at and look at very seriously. This has been trialled elsewhere in the country, in Cornwall in particular, where I believe the financial gains were significant from a similar look at their operating model. So I recommend this paper to Cabinet, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Scrimshaw.
Thank you, Chair. Again, on behalf of Overview and Scrutiny Committee, I can inform Cabinet that we will be looking at this particular issue at our meeting at the end of the month. It appears to be, as been suggested, a very important piece of work, and as such, to be honest, we were surprised we hadn't previously heard of it. Pre-scrutiny of Cabinet proposals could be a very useful tool for the Executive. As yet, that doesn't seem to happen, but Scrutiny are keen to try and work with you to find a way of doing this. The new government guidelines around local authority scrutiny seem to suggest this is a useful way of working, as do examples from other councils, and I certainly would like to try to explore this. Regarding this particular item, it seems the council have been paid a consultant, Newton Europe, to come up with a plan, a new operating model, to save money in adult services, and that plan is to engage another set of consultants to do some work to design to make huge financial savings, assuming those savings are realised, to pay then those new consultants between £4 and £7 million. And to do this because the council does not have the expertise needed to do this themselves in-house. I'd like to ask a series of questions. Firstly, is it true that Newton Europe were paid £435,000 to come up with this suggestion? And can I have clarification that a proper procurement process was carried out and that other companies were given the opportunity to tender for that work? And given that this new proposal has come directly from their suggestion, can I be assured that Newton Europe will not be able to tender for that new contract themselves? Otherwise, it could potentially be that they sort of benefit from their own suggestion to you, as it were. And also, if it is the case that we are potentially going to be paying out £4 million plus to a private company because the council does not have the required expertise or capacity to carry out this future work ourselves, could I ask the portfolio holder for his view on whether or not we should maybe be looking at building up the capacity in-house within our own organisation? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stanborough.
Thank you, Chair. So, building on what Councillor Scrimshaw said, much of, in fact, I think all of which I agree with, the recommendations in this report call for, in all three recommendations, for delegated authority to be given to the Executive Director for Adults and Communities and Wellbeing in consultation with the Cabinet member, so that decisions can be taken, one, to undertake a competitive procurement process to select a partner to support adult services in the design and implementation of a new operating model, two, to negotiate the contract for the design and delivery of the new operating model, and three, to award the contract following this procurement process. So none of that decision making will be taken in public, it's all being delegated. Can I suggest that given the potential benefits from this contract and also the size of the savings that may arise, some or all of those decisions should be taken in public, perhaps by this Cabinet, I'm sure by this Cabinet in fact, and that in order to ensure transparency, you perhaps should not delegate the authority in this particular case, and that you should ensure that you are open and transparent, you don't delegate, and you take these decisions in public. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Morris.
Thank you.
Can I just make a point on,
Yes.
sorry, Councillor Stanborough's last point? He does make a valid point, I think, so I think we need to find a way of incorporating some reporting mechanism to show that we are open and transparent in this.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I was going to suggest that we brought something back to Cabinet anyway at a later date when we have a bit more information. It's very difficult to give people information when you don't have a lot of information. It's a bit chicken and egg. I agree Scrutiny should, of course, see this work and follow it through, but we don't know what that work is as yet. We know the frame. We haven't appointed anyone to carry out the work, so I think it would be, there's not a lot you can scrutinise at this stage, but obviously we'll try and keep that scrutiny level up, and I do believe we are intending to do some sort of all-member briefing as well at some point. Whether that's tied in with the unitary briefing, I'm not sure, but we're certainly planning on doing a full briefing on that. It is a very important piece of work, and of course my door's always open, Mick, for you to come and chat to me about this or anything else in the Directorate. So if you have any questions, do feel free to come and ask me. Yeah, your first question was the money paid to Newton Europe was paid from the business rates retention pot, which, as I said in my presentation, was agreed by the board that agree where that money is to be spent. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I think I'd already answered it anyway in my... Oh, yeah, there was another question. You were going to say whether they should be allowed to bid for the contract, I think was one of the questions you asked. Well, I don't think we can say, unless I'm speaking out of turn, that anyone can bid for a contract. I think it would, I'm going to pass over to Anna on that one because I'm not entirely sure of the answer, but I would have thought they can bid for the work because they're free to do so. But unless Anna has something else to say on that, I would over to her on that one.
So just to say, in terms of the first piece of work, it didn't go to an open tender because we used a national government framework, which is called the Crown Commercial Services, to call off an amount of days. So it's a pre-qualified framework which lots of consultants and organisations are on. And the reason we didn't go to tender is we didn't know what it would find. The whole point of having those is that you can call off some specialism if you need it to investigate things, which is exactly what we did. And it went through that process to secure the work that they did. In terms of them bidding, they are free to bid because all of the work that they have done, it's not about anything specific to them, it's an analysis of where we are and what the opportunities are, and all the outputs of their work will be made available to all bidders. So there will be no difference, and the team, if Newtons choose to bid, the team that does that will be separated from the team who've been on the ground. But everything that they have found, all the diagnostics and all the information conclusions would be available to any bidder in the market.
Thank you. And I think you also asked about capacity and building up. I mean, this is a very specialised area, isn't it? I was going to say the opposite. You're going to say the opposite? We are building up capacity is what you're going to say. Carry on.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. One of the key things about this, and you'll know from overview of scrutiny before, and we'll talk about this when we come and do the deep dive with you on the 30th, is actually that we transfer the skills. So part of the plan for this is absolutely that we create in-house team skills in the service. So we are right now out looking for team leads to be involved in this programme so that it's owned from within the service. And the idea is that out of the back of it, we should end up with permanent improvement champions who understand how this kind of work is done and who then, more importantly, can go into the unitaries and help build the sustained transformation going forward. And as I'm sure Paul would say, in terms of the LGR programme, the stages of that are very similar. So discovery, design, implementation, stabilisation, transformation, all those things. So absolutely, we should be building, and we will build the in-house skill. That will be part of the contract that they do that, and that then we can go and make the benefit of that going forward when they leave.
I think that's me done, Chair, because...
Thanks,
Thank you.
Councillor Morris. So I just wanted to make some points. This really is about making the service more efficient and saving money going into the long term, as Anna Earnshaw has just mentioned. So we should be supportive of this. And I think if we're going to accept the recommendations today, we'll put a point in there that we do bring a report back to Cabinet based on that earlier conversation. So with that minor amendment, are we happy to agree the report, Cabinet? Agreed. Thank you. And that's the end of the meeting. Thank you, everyone.